I want to welcome everybody to today's webinar, Secure File Cloud Sharing and Issues Surrounding. How can we make sure that if we're going to share our documents in the cloud, we do so successfully, securely, and we're going to talk about some principles gained from experience as to what we've seen work and not work. So we're going to talk about some options for cloud sharing, what are the benefits and risks, and then if you choose to do it, some setup recommendations, some file naming principles. I want to welcome you, Cincinnati Academy of Medicine members, to this webinar. Our goal today is to inform and educate, not to sell products or services. Appreciate your support of the Academy, and PBSI has a valued long-term relationship with the Academy. Our goal is to share from what we've learned to help other offices in the greater Cincinnati area succeed with their use of technology. So I'm going to begin. First of all, many of you who are in attendance have been long-term clients of PBSI. I want to thank you very much for your long-term support. We've had, in some cases, decades of relationship with some of you. Some of you, this is your first exposure to PBSI. And so just brief information about us. We provide technology services for healthcare and other organizations, but specialize in healthcare in Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana. We're centered in Cincinnati. We have a lot of experienced staff, have gained a lot of knowledge over the years, and work with hundreds of healthcare offices. So proactive IT service, including security, is central to what we do for clients. So today, our topic is going to be cloud file sharing. So first of all, why might you want to use cloud file sharing? So there are some offices where, frankly, there just isn't much advantage to put documents in the cloud, and so why bother? There's just no reason to do it. But there are some. So multi-location access, you have more than one location, or you have the need to access documents at home or from other locations, vacations or so forth. Once you put documents in the cloud, all of this is presuming it's done securely, you have access to those documents no matter where you are. Multi-device access, you have a PC, you have a laptop, you have an iPhone, you want to be able to access documents, again, remotely, so cloud storage is the ideal way, so you don't have to log into your network in order to access the documents. Another reason might be critical need for availability. So if the time is there where my internet in the office is down, or my network is down, or my PC is down, but I need to be able to get to that documentation, wherever you can get to an internet connection, you can get to your secure documents in the cloud. If you have concerns about backup or restore, has our backup been tested? Another reason to go to the cloud, presuming again that your cloud storage method is securely backed up. And generally speaking, that's a given for virtually all cloud host providers. Reliability. So you have an aging server possibly, you want to make sure that anything you've stored on the server, your documents and so forth, are not at risk. So removing that uncertainty puts it outside of the office where your own technology isn't going to be an issue. Same thing, you have a server, you know it's getting older, you really don't want to invest money in a new server, you can avoid in-house hardware costs by going to the cloud. So we're going to look at some choices here, but which vendor is, for most of us, the first choice? The main vendors in the marketplace for cloud sharing, although there are many, are Microsoft and Google. So Microsoft offers OneDrive, Google offers Drive. Many of us use Apple's iCloud for photos, or Amazon Prime has some storage abilities, Adobe, Dropbox. There are just many there are many examples of vendors, and not to discourage use of any of those, they're all legitimate, but we're going to focus on OneDrive and Google Drive in our consideration. So what's important is consistent setup and locked down procedures. And what we want is simplicity and security. So I'm going to display a document we've created, and this is available to anyone as a free download if you request. So compare some of the vendors. So OneDrive and Drive are both free, and the specs change on these. So with OneDrive, this is the free version. You get 5 gigabytes of storage per user. Google Drive, you get 15 free per user, and then the incremental fees for more storage is fairly small. OneDrive for Business is the product provided associated with Office 365. So if you have Office 365, you immediately get 1 terabytes per user, and then you can add to that. So among these choices, my recommendations would be Google Drive or OneDrive for Business. The distinction comes in security. So when we talk about security, we're talking about data encryption in transit when files are going back and forth. All major cloud services encrypt data during transit. Data at rest, here's the separator. Google Drive and OneDrive for Business store data encrypted at rest. OneDrive, the free OneDrive, does not encrypt data at rest, meaning if you have put any confidential documents out there, those documents are exposed to Google web crawlers, to all kinds of search. That data is not secure, but it is with Drive and OneDrive for Business. So an option, if you want to use OneDrive, which the free OneDrive is a perfectly fine product, if you have information you need to keep secure, whether it's your own personal Quicken information or whether it's patient information where you have a reason to store it in a portable area, then you want to password protect with some kind of significant password, in other words, at least 8 characters, to encrypt those files. A password encrypts the file. In Word or Adobe or Excel, when you encrypt the file, when you store it with a password, you encrypt it. So there are other options, but one of the things you just want to pay attention to is making sure that you've got a secure environment. So most of these rate really well in terms of security. So how do you share? We'll go through an example, but basically it's really simple. Once you have the infrastructure set, you can go to a folder in Windows Explorer, right-click on that and say share. Click the share option, and then the choices of exactly what happens there vary based on which product, but this is a straightforward thing to do. So the difficulty is not in sharing. The difficulty or the important issues are in how you go about deciding what to set up and what training is in place so that the things you set up are actually used effectively. So there's a difference also recognized between shared, where files are located in the cloud and can be shared there, versus synchronized, where files are located both places. So synchronized files seem like a good idea on the front end, but you end up duplicating the storage and using up a good bit of bandwidth in transferring files back and forth. And the uncertainty of where is the, quote, home for this document is the main disadvantage. Synchronized has very specific capabilities, but generally what you want to do is locate your files in the cloud and share them. So one caution, we have found that cloud sharing works really well for documents, meaning Microsoft documents, Google documents, Excel, PowerPoint, Word, those kinds of things, just fine. Video, different story. Some of the, in fact, most of the cloud sharing arrangements just don't work well with video, which is why Microsoft, there are others, came up with a free service. Vimeo, you want to store documents, I would choose Vimeo. Separate subject, so we'll talk about that if people have questions about it. So recommendations, Google Drive, best overall for simplicity and very little downside. And if you, on the other hand, have Office 365 and you're a Microsoft shop, OneDrive for Business works very well. You just need a little bit of expertise. It's not expensive or difficult to set these up. Just do it with some pre-knowledge. Okay, so cloud sharing, we know why we'd use it. We need access from multiple locations. So here are some guidelines for the use of shared folders. We've helped many medical offices do this. So there's some really key things we've learned here. So first of all, establish a policy of no practice documents on C drives. That is very hard to actually do, but once everybody's on board, you can do it quite effectively. We have this policy at PBSI, no company documents on C drives, and I, with some frequency, walk around and just ask, so where did you locate that folder? And just looking for somebody who said, well, I stored it temporarily on my C drive. Well, there's always a better way. There's always a different way. People don't own documents. Organizations own documents. So once people understand that, really important policy. So you start by setting up a shared drive, whether it's internal or web-hosted. Then you want to map the share folder on each employee's PC and laptop so that once you've put the documents there, you give them one-click access to get there. Worst thing you can do is set up a shared folder structure and make people figure out how to find it. They just won't use it, generally speaking. So another important thing is go to each workstation. So your tech company, PBSI or anybody can do this for you, and go into each Microsoft app that that employee may use and set the default save location to a shared folder instead of the C drive. This turns out to be one of the biggest impediments to effective use. People don't know where their documents are stored. They don't pay attention to it, and all of a sudden you have documents that they think are on a shared drive that are actually on their C drive. So you can really head this off at the pass with a little bit of intentional pre-work. And then, of course, you want to make sure that these documents are backed up. So we have a couple of examples that I'm going to provide here. So we've set up a folder structure template for healthcare, which we provide for free to clients. And this is by no means the only way to set up a folder structure. But so you start by setting up your policies. And the folder structure might look like this. You have a shared drive, whatever you name it, and a wide-ranging top-level folder called practice-wide documents. So segregating these by external forms, so that would be forms used by patients, referring sources, vendors, hospitals, forms that come from outside of us, internal forms, forms used by all employees, timesheets, vacation requests, whatever forms you use, which there are lots of variations, IT documentation, equipment lists, purchase or support agreements, job descriptions. So again, there's more than one way to do this, but so that you have an organized way for these things to be stored. Legal document templates, so where are your standard HIPAA business associate agreement, your employee understanding of security practices document, that kind of thing. Management documents, so we get into things that might be secured now, where goals, mission statement, vision statement, things that the typical employee won't care about or know about or need to access. New employee documents, handbook, handouts, policies, training policies, documents that an employee should sign. And then whatever other folders there are, I want to highly recommend that you include a folder called unapproved documents. So these would be documents that are not yet finished, and anybody can place a document there without approval. And what you're trying to head off is quite straightforward. It's this. An employee says, well, I just stored that on my C drive because I'm not done with it yet. Well, I don't know how many times in my career I've started on a document, put a lot of work into it, and then got off doing something else, and a year later thought, where did I put that? And I may have to start over. Worse yet, that happens to another employee and they completely forget, and somebody else comes along and says, gee, I thought we had a policies and procedures document, don't find one anywhere, so let's start one from scratch, not knowing that it was in a C drive of another employee that never intended to leave it there, but it wasn't, quote, approved. Or employees who say, well, I'm not really the one who sets the policies. I know how to document this policy, but I don't think it's my job. So if you provide an unapproved documents folder and anybody can store things there, then you can intentionally review the things that are in there periodically if you wish. It shouldn't be a permanent location, but it's much better than putting things on a C drive. Okay, so you may have a folder structure for accounting administrative documents that would likely be private based on the need to access. Billing team documents, what are the procedures for the billing team, reports for the current year, reports for prior year, patient reports, EOBs, whatever you wish. And by the way, if we're talking EOBs or anything that's got patient information, those folders must be encrypted. So you do not want, and ideally the documents inside encrypted, you do not want public access to documents that have PHI. That's a very bad idea for HIPAA and HIPAA auditing. Clinical team documents, what are the procedures for the clinical team? You could have a separate subfolder for nurses or MAs or physicians, but typically clinical procedures will all be in one place. Possibly patient ed samples that we use, that periodically will print copies of these. So what samples do we use? Where do we store them? Patient forms, you could store these either here or under your admin document templates. But where are the forms we use to fill out data if our EHR is not available and we need to go back to paper, and so forth. Photo library, so you can have subfolders for employees, for events, organize this any place you want to, but it's really helpful to have, and some might call this a marketing team document set. Accounting documents, accounting procedures, financial reports, human resources, procedures, HR documents, employee list, insurance coverage list, confidential documents. So you can set any folder or folders to have specific only access to one person or to a small group of people. Compensation agreements, physician agreements, practice, corporate documentation would be examples. So marketing, not everybody has a marketing area, so these are guidelines, these are ideas. Marketing documents, old marketing documents that we no longer use, we don't use it anymore, but it wasn't a bad idea, or we had some good ideas back when, let's not throw it away. Unapproved, these are the work in process things. So it's very possible, in fact, at PBSI we have a, quote, unapproved folder underneath almost every major folder. So marketing would have an unapproved, human resources would have an unapproved, and so forth. And then private documents where they're only available to an individual. So what would go on C drives? Employee documents. They want to put their resume someplace, put it on their C drive. If it's theirs, if they want to put their individual password list on a secure area that's encrypted, please don't leave it there unencrypted. Sure, use your C drive for that. That's the employee. He owns that. He or she owns that document. But if it is anything related to a practice issue, it does not belong on a C drive. Okay, I think I've said that probably enough times. So this is an example of a folder structure. So what I'm going to say soon is that this folder structure, whatever you use, just document it and agree to it up front. So it's important. Hopefully those are some useful ideas. So what are some other principles related to shared storage? And again, it doesn't really matter now whether this is cloud storage or local storage. Some document sharing principles we've learned. So no practice documents on C drives. So here's another important one. Look before you ask, and if you learn it, store it. So what do I mean by this? I'm wondering if we have a policy for X. I don't think we do, so I'm going to go ahead and create one here. Do not do that. Instead, look where you think it should be for a document named like you might think that it should look like, and lo and behold, many times you find it there. Plus, every time you do this, you become more familiar with the folder structure. You know how to find things next time. So always look before you ask. When anyone creates something from scratch that already exists, it should create anger and frustration. That is really bad. We've just disrespected the employee, wasted compensated time. And if you learn it, store it. So if something needs to be turned into a procedure, sure, send it in an email, but emails get lost. So what we tend to do is encourage storing that kind of thing in unapproved documents folders if there isn't a better location. So, and of course, this is a guideline that will vary based on who the staff is and what your trust level is and whether they're experienced employees. But generally speaking, we encourage employees, if you find a document that has a mistake, whether it's a typo or something that really doesn't represent the correctness, fix it. And then communicate separately to the person responsible. Hey, I fixed this, I found this, thought this needed to be changed. Okay, minimize subfolders. This is a frequent mistake. Sometimes I see a folder structure that has 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 levels deep. And what happens is you think you're being organized, you're actually hiding documents. So I look for a document in a folder and I can't find it. Well, it's 3 subfolders deep. So there is a way to really help with this, but generally speaking, if you use Windows Explorer, I'll talk about this and I'll do a short demonstration of this, you can find anything you want to without a lot of subfolders. Instead, name files descriptively with some intentionality. So minimize subfolders. This is a hard one to teach, but it is really a good idea. Okay, duplicate files. This is one of the very most difficult problems that must be eradicated if you're going to successfully use a file sharing arrangement. So among the principles there, do not modify a file, give it a different name, and leave the original out there. Inevitably, someone is going to find the older version of that. They don't see the new one, they see the old one. They don't have the same name, they're not in the same location, and they say, oh, here's our policy for X, and they pick it up, and they think that's right. Now they modify it, and they save it, and its save date now has a date today, even though this is really a 3-year-old document, and we will never put this jack-in-the-box back in the box, because now we have multiple documents out there and nobody knows which one's more current, and each of them have something that's useful. So how do you solve the problem is you change the document, and if you must, you're afraid you might not have changed it correctly, then contact the quote owner of the file, the resource expert, tell them you did it and ask for feedback, or put different color coding, however you want to do it, but generally you want to modify documents. So if you must do this, and sometimes there are good reasons to do this, I don't have enough knowledge to know if I'm doing this correctly, so I'm going to create a new version. So what you must do, this is an opinion, but I have a really strong opinion on this over many years of seeing this done the other way. If you must do it, replace the original with the same document name. In other words, you only have one document, but before you do that, rename the old document to put at the end of the file name -old. So what that does is the beginning of the file name is all the same. So if anybody looks in that folder, they see two documents with the same name, one of them with the -old name. Nobody's wondering which one of those is most current. And anything with a -old either needs to be deleted or reconciled, so it's a way to identify that something was saved intentionally, but it's not to be used as the current. So, and generally speaking, documents that have dates as a part of the document name, it's a bad idea unless it's related to a transaction. So documents related to a patient, put a date with it. Documents that's a letter that's a date specific, quotes, purchase orders, anything that is transaction oriented, fine, have the data part of the name. But if it is not transaction oriented, like a policy or procedure or a template for something, don't put the word new, don't put the word old, don't put the word the date of it, because inevitably we want to change that document later on. We don't want to have to create another document with the name -June when the old one had the name -May, and all of a sudden we're in a mess. Security control. So passwords on documents are a good way to secure documents, but I'd recommend using it to a minimum. Instead, if you have secure documents, like your human resources has a list of social security numbers, yes, encrypt that document, but put it in a non-public folder, a private folder, so other people can't even get there. And documents with passwords should be limited to protecting information that should be protected primarily. That would be patient PHI, employee information, or practice confidential corporate accounting information. So most documents shouldn't have a password. Avoid using personal names as subfolder names. We find this so frequently. Somebody puts a name out on a shared folder and it has their name on it, and so inevitably the conversation's similar. Go to that person and say, why do you have it your name? Well, that's just mine. Why is it yours? Well, I'm working on it. I'm not finished with it yet. No, that doesn't make it yours. That means that you don't want anybody to mess with it or see it yet. Put it in unapproved in that area. If you must put your name associated with a document for as a temporary thing, fine, go ahead, but don't have a folder out there, because you're going to hide whatever's there forevermore. No one's going to look under the folder name Mark if they're not Mark. So one other really important thing here, in my opinion, is use File Explorer to find and open files. So I'm going to do a short demonstration here of why I feel this way. So here is Windows Explorer on my PC, and I have links set up where I have reports that I access frequently. Under links, I have customer file documentation. We have policies and procedures documentation. We have sales literature documentation. The point is, there's a Word document, there's a PDF document, there are all kinds of different documents that are here. And if I use Windows Explorer, I see them all, and I open them up in the appropriate program. Or my PC will do that automatically. It'll use Adobe to open up the Adobe version. But otherwise, if I went in with Word and looking for things, I would not see any of the non-Word documents. So it's a great tool, and you can set up links and favorites, and we have other content to describe more about that. But so this is a hard habit to break also, but generally people are accustomed to using Word to open Word documents and going to PowerPoint to open PowerPoint documents, and my strong recommendation, don't do any of that. Always use Windows Explorer to open all documents. Okay, so summary, we know that cloud sharing might be useful for multi-location or multi-device access or a critical need for availability, reliability. These are all good reasons to use cloud file sharing as far as vendor of choice. It's almost not important as much as the organization behind the process. So we have many resources that are available that are free of charge if you ask. Set up documentation related to Windows or OneNote or cloud sharing or some of these folder sharing, so feel free to reach out to us. We provide services to Academy members. In many cases are free, always at reduced rates. I want to thank you for your attendance, and hopefully it's been really helpful to you in discussing file sharing and some pros and cons. So we are finished with content. I want to thank you for your attendance, and you are welcome at any time to log off. So thank you for your attendance. Hope everybody has a good day.